really great to catch up with you. I'm looking forward to getting into good hang in your world of music. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You bet. So let's begin our journey with this. 5 years ago, this pandemic crippled and shut so many things down, changed our lives. How did you get through that 2020 era, and how has it influenced your creativity and living in 2025?
I spent a lot of time during the pandemic just working on fundamental technique on the saxophone because I didn't have particular gigs to be practicing for. I didn't have repertoire that I had to learn or um, instruments to brush up on because I'm a doubler. Saxophone is my primary instrument, particularly alto saxophone, but I do lots of gigs with flute and clarinet and the other saxophones. So I don't always have the time to devote to my primary instrument that I would like. So I spent a lot of time during the pandemic just working on that stuff, and I got into a little bit of electronic music during the pandemic, which I wouldn't say I really have done much since. But I started to do a little bit of like Ableton programming, beat making type of stuff during the pandemic. Maybe I'll pick that up again someday. So I wouldn't say that anything during the pandemic really influenced this particular album, beyond just kind of retrenchment of core skills that have, translated into the record.
So talk to me about the vision, the idea for this album, and how good it feels just on a visceral level of how it came out.
So big band music is really what got me into the saxophone and jazz in the first place. I started on clarinet, actually recorder in third grade, and then clarinet in fourth grade. And I went to an honor band concert where I played clarinet in the elementary honor band, and the other ensemble at that concert was the senior high jazz band. It was a big band. And I heard that music, and I told my dad I need to play saxophone so I can be in that band because they didn't have clarinet in the band. And then 2 years later, my parents got me a saxophone and started taking lessons. And in high school, I was doing kind of clarinet and saxophone, but then really focused on saxophone and was in the big band at my high school. Made the all-state and senior high honor band my senior year. So it took a lot of trying and failing and finally overcoming to get there. And then I went to college for jazz studies. And big band has always been a major love for me in the, kinds of music that I listen to. I, of course, love small groups, playing with small groups and listening to small groups. But big band has always been, something I kind of go back to and enjoy listening to and enjoy doing. And in 2009 or 10, I decided to write my first big band chart from scratch. And I wrote it, I submitted it for a competition, a composition competition, didn't make it or anything. It was just kind of sitting on my computer, not really anything being done with it. And then a couple years after that, I started a second arrangement, just kind of on a whim, and didn't get around to finishing it. And then eventually, several years later, in 2019, a friend of mine named Nick Benoit, who's a bass player in New Orleans, he was running a music series called the Common Tone series. And the theme of the music series was two ensembles and one common person, or it's one commonality between the two ensembles. That's the common tone. In music, a common tone is when you have two chords, one note is in common between the chords. So I asked him if I could do a show and do a small group set and a big band set. And he said, sure, you can do that. So then I had to actually write the arrangements. So, like all things with most people, until you have a real deadline, you don't get anything done, right? So I booked the show, wrote 6 or 7 arrangements, did the show. That was in 2019, and it turned out really well. Did another one in 2020 before the pandemic, and then obviously everything got shut down. And so I didn't really do anything with any of that music during the pandemic. As I said, I was just kind of working on core skills. But then when things started to open up in the city again, I booked another show for the big band, and it went very well again. Good response from the musicians and from the audience. So I applied for a grant from a great organization called the Threadhead Cultural Foundation, which supports New Orleans musicians and artists and anyone in kind of Southeast Louisiana that's furthering the art and culture of the community. And so they gave me some funding that allowed me to actually make this album, make this recording. So it's really has been, going back to 2019 and writing those charts, like 6 years of effort to get this album out. So I'm very happy to have it finally available for the public to listen to and enjoy.
So another twist to this is it was released on the actual day 20 years ago that Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans.
Yeah.
Was that how did that feel to kind of look back and to see where you're at now and to kind of have all that in the rear view?
Um, it was a bit accidental in a way. It took so long to kind of get everything ready for the album that I had to have a lot of lead time with my partners that I was working with to release it. And new music is always best released on a Friday. So as I was looking at the calendar, um, I knew I was going to do a release in August, sometime in August, and I was looking at the calendar. I was like, well, the Katrina anniversary is on a Friday. Let's just do it then because it can be. This album is not about Katrina. It's not a memorial or
Yeah.
remembrance or a requiem or anything like that. But that day definitely impacted my life and set it on the path that I've been on since in various ways. And the collections of songs on the album are from my entire life. So, for example, Saida's Song Flute by John Coltrane, which I arranged for us to play, that's on the Great Giant Steps album. That was one of the first albums I bought when I first bought jazz on CD, back when I was in eighth grade. I think I bought that album in 1997 on CD. And I played that song with a band after Katrina when I was doing a weekly. And then the two originals that are on there, Temporary Blindness and Coltrane Funk, I wrote those when I was at the University of New Orleans for my master's in jazz. And I chose to go to UNO after Katrina because I wanted to stay in the city instead of go somewhere else for graduate school. Libertango is the Astor Piazzolla composition that I arranged for the big band. And I first played that song actually in Beijing when I was living in Beijing teaching English. I played with the Beijing International Chamber Orchestra. That's where I first heard that piece of music. And I decided to go to China and teach English because I had been in New Orleans my whole life, went to undergrad here, went to graduate school here. I felt like I have to get out and see the world and do something different. And in a way, me going to China was an indirect result of Katrina because my original plan was to go outside of New Orleans for graduate school and then come home. And I ended up not doing that. So then I kind of had my own study abroad experience in a way. So I chose to release it on the anniversary of Katrina because of um, the sequence of events that my life has taken over the last 20 years, kind of a remembrance of my own journey through life and music, more so than being about the city and the recovery that the city is kind of still undertaking.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
I hope they get a sense of what it's like to be in the city of New Orleans, that it's always a good time. After Katrina, bands were playing in bars in October. I was reading about that. There's a lot of articles in the local publications about Katrina stuff. And in the pandemic, people were still performing music from their house and having live streams. And New Orleans is a place you can go and be yourself, whoever you are, whoever you may be. And it's not just about people going to Bourbon Street and carousing and everything. You can come here and have an experience that will help you remember why it's good to be alive. You can experience real joy, connection, community. That's what I want people to get out of it.
So what was the first live jazz show that you witnessed that made you think, I want to do that one day?
Well, I guess the first one really was that honor band concert. The first one that I remember going to, the first jazz show that I remember going to of professionals was at Snug Harbor, coincidentally, another big band, the John Mahoney Big Band. I was at Loyola University New Orleans summer jazz camp. John Mahoney was the chair of the jazz department when I was in high school and then when I was at Loyola as well. And during that week, it was the summer between eighth and ninth grade. I went to Loyola Jazz Camp, and John Mahoney was the main clinician for the camp and had a big band. He's an arranger and composer, and the big band was playing at Snug Harbor. And I remember my friend Adam and I went to Snug Harbor. I think his dad took us, and we kind of weren't supposed to be there, I guess, because maybe it's a 21 only venue. But because it was the week of the jazz camp and Mahoney was the person playing, they let us in. And I remember we sat. Snug Harbor's a great venue. Definitely recommend everyone go and see some music there. On the second floor, you can really kind of look down and see everything very well. I remember we were on the second floor in the corner, kind of looking over the shoulder of everyone playing. And I remember people in that ensemble that night were also clinicians at the jazz camp. So Tony DeGrati, who's a saxophone player in New Orleans, who I studied with at Loyola. Um, I think Johnny Vodakovich was the drummer that night. I want to say Jesse Boyd, who's a bass player in New Orleans. Um, I think Bobby Campo was maybe the trumpet player who's I think lives in Baton Rouge but plays in New Orleans a lot. So it was really cool to see these teachers that I was interacting with during the day at the camp then go and play this really complex but very compelling music in the jazz club at night.
So, what is it that you like the best about being a professional musician? What motivates you? What gets you up every day?
It's a few things. I think the craft, just enjoying the craft is a big part of it. Um, when I'm doing arrangements, it's kind of like doing a puzzle. Um, Usually when I have the idea of an arrangement, I have a little sheet with all these other songs that I want to arrange. I kind of write them down every time I come up with it. So I come up with the idea of a song, and then I kind of map out in my mind who do I want to feature on this song, or what instrument do I want to feature? Um, who do I want to have play the melody? Who do I want to have take the improvised solo? Um, do I want to have a key change? Do I want to have like a different kind of rhythmic feel to it? Again, like Saida's song flute, it's not the regular fast swing feel. It's like a halftime funk. So I kind of come up with these ideas for, okay, what is the kind of grand vision of this arrangement? And then I start to actually write it. I use Sibelius to do my arranging. And as I'm putting the pieces together, it's like I said, it's like doing a puzzle because I have to figure out, okay, is this idea that I originally had going to work? It's not really going to work. So how do I transform it? How do I involve all the parts of the band in a way that's interesting and compelling for the players so that people aren't just playing whole notes for an extended period of time? Um, so trying to find the um, most effective way to translate this initial idea into something that's actually playable is a big part of my enjoyment as an arranger. And the craft of just practicing the saxophone is also very enjoyable. As far as being on the gigs themselves, I love connecting with the other musicians on the stage, sharing the moments where something interesting happens, something unexpected happens. The feeling that you get when you really are in a mind meld with other musicians is something that's really difficult to reproduce in any other aspect of the human experience, at least as far as I've had. And then, of course, connecting with the audience, having people hear this thing that I've spent hours and sometimes years working on, getting that played in front of people and seeing their reaction, their response to it is, of course, the greatest joy. I mean, I think music is all about bringing people together, and that's what I really enjoy the most about it.
So, why do you love this art form we call jazz?
I think it allows for a range of emotions in a way that maybe other music doesn't to me. I think jazz can express the highest highs and lowest lows, sometimes even in the same song. It allows for individual expression, but through community. Because even when you're taking a solo in a jazz band, you're never really playing, it's not never, but you're rarely actually playing by yourself. The rhythm section is there and you're interacting with them. So even though you're expressing your thoughts and your emotions and your interpretation of the song, it's impacted and filtered through other people's experiences. So I think the collaborative aspects of jazz combined with the individual expression is what I really, really love about it.
So, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you family, friends, fans, everyone on the bandstand, everyone that you work with that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am a striver, I guess. Um, I try to work really hard on my craft. Don't have enough time to do it. Don't have as much time as I want. Um, I try to take care of all the details as best I can and make sure that everyone is going to have a good experience, whether that's the band or the audience. Um, I try to set people up for success in the ensemble. So, I mean, somebody once wrote, I don't know if this is a good description of me or not, but there was a quote in an article one time on the most meticulous musician you'll ever meet. I don't know if that's necessarily true because I have a confession to make. I don't tape my parts as much as I should. And anybody who's played in a big band knows that when there's loose sheet music, it can be hard to wrangle. So maybe someday I'll get around to taping the parts. But I try to be conscientious and detail oriented.
You know, coming from Kansas City, there's times where I'll step out of, say, the Blue Room on 18 and Vine, which, with so much history, so many ghosts that are potentially floating around, and I wonder what would be one of the coolest shows to catch down here. And I know for me, like a Battle of the Bands, something like that, or even Count Basie on some anonymous night would be
Yeah.
wonderful. When you think about that lore and the ghosts and the history of New Orleans, what would you love to have stumbled upon in the history of that fabled town and see live?
I just read the autobiography of Dr. John, and he talked in that book about Canal Street and Bourbon Street clubs in I think in the 60s. It was a little unclear the time period. Dr. John is a bit of a meanderer, as everyone who's listened to his music can know. Um, but he talked about these very high energy jam sessions that would go until like 4 or 5 in the morning. And the musicians would finish their like public gigs at 1 or 2 and then go somewhere else and play until like 4 or 5 in the morning. So I think being at something like that would have been incredible because Dr. John would have been there, the Meters would have been there, all kinds of really important, impactful New Orleans musicians from the beginning of R&B through the beginning of funk, and then also Dr. John talked about this in his autobiographies as well. Like everybody plays everything in New Orleans in a lot of ways. It's just the nature of the community here. Most people don't really specialize in one genre. People can play a lot of different kinds of music. It's just a big melting pot. So that's something that I truly wish I would have been able to be at.
Yeah, we have something like that called the Mutual Musicians Foundation down on 18 and Vine. It's on Highland, and it's the same thing. It's after hours. It's a jam session. A lot of young cats get their chops going. It's a really cool place. So, very unique towns in that respect. So, if anyone wants to pick up Good Hang, catch you live, any of the Good Business previous work, any of it, where do they go?
They can go to my website, davidbodemusic.com, DAVIDBODE music.com. That's also my handle on all social media. I have 3 videos up right now on YouTube of the songs from the record, and the remaining ones will be coming up over the next couple of months. And on the website is a calendar of upcoming events. I don't have any big band shows set right now, so working on that, but I play with other groups around town, so people can catch me at some of those other engagements.
Cool. David, this has been great, man. Thank you. Thank you for your story. Thank you for talking about the album. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.